Well, after an interesting weekend of racing at Daytona International Superspeedway, we have plenty to go over. We will discuss Austin Dillon and Jeremy Clements winning over the weekend, locking themselves into their respective playoffs. We'll also go over some of the decisions made by NASCAR officials from the finish of the Saturday Xfinity race to Sunday's Turn 1 Melee. And we have all this to discuss and more on this episode of 3 Wide. Quite a lengthy rain delay before the start of the Xfinity Series race. Ultimately, they were able to get it going, and it started out a really, exciting race. A lot of close racing, side by side, 3 wide, drafting, everything going on, but no crashes. Everybody was keeping it clean. That would turn into chaos in stage 3, and Jeremy Clements, he was ultimately able to survive and get his second career win and hold off Timmy Hill and AJ Allmendinger after 3 overtimes and lock himself into the playoffs. Behind him in the top 10, you had Timmy Hill in second, AJ Allmendinger in third. Brandon Brown finished in fourth, followed by Sage Karam in fifth. Ryan Vargas finished in sixth with Ty Gibbs in seventh. Alex Labbe, he finished in eighth with J.J. Ely in ninth. And Kyle Sieg rounded out the top 10. And like I said, the first two stages, it was some exciting racing. I mean, these guys were doing everything but wrecking. AJ was throwing some pretty rough blocks as far as aggressiveness to stay in the lead early on. But like everybody, the only instance we really had there at the beginning was you had Sammy Smith get out of shape and crash in stage 1, ending his night early. In stage 2, you had Sheldon Creed get spun there towards the end of that stage. He was able to keep it off the wall and continue his race on for a little bit longer. And the third stage, just like everyone just pretty much forgot to drive. Everyone forgot what they were doing. There were 6 cautions that, took a lot of contenders out, a lot of big names, and all of these wrecks happened in the last 47 laps, and that's counting the overtime laps. So when you lose so many quality cars, it really takes away from the race and the finish. You have a greater chance of getting that upset winner, but it doesn't feel quite as monumental as it should when that driver doesn't come to the line holding off some of the top drivers. Noah Gragson, he was the strongest driver, without a doubt all night, leading, I believe it was 52 laps. And AJ was another strong car. He was still up in the running, but his car just wasn't up to full snuff. And that's not to take away from Jeremy or his team. He did what needed to be done to win this race. He kept his car clean. He did a great job with that and was able to get a huge victory for him and his guys, get them in the playoffs. That's huge for that team alone. So I don't want to take anything away from him on that. But there in that last stretch of the race, you had crashes that included, Sheldon Creed, who was very aggressive throughout the race, running up front most of the day. Sam Mayer, Justin Allgaier, and Josh Berry got taken out in one incident. That one also included AJ. That's where he got his damage. There were, 3 contenders from Junior Motorsports taken out in that wreck. You had more with Daniel Hemrick, Brandon Jones being taken out, Jeb Burton. As these crashes went on, a lot of the big names were getting taken out of the running. And you look at the top 10, like I mentioned, Alex Labbe, Brandon Brown, Kyle Sieg, they all got caught up in some of those overtime crashes, but they were still able to get a top 10. And I mean, these were guys with some heavy damage. Kyle Sieg came into the pit road after his crash with his hood up on his windshield. And Alex Labbe and Brandon Brown, they were just limping around the track, smoke coming from the car. I mean, they were pretty well tore up. And, heck, Brandon Brown comes away with a 4th place finish. That just shows how depleted the field was there at the end. And, I hate it mainly for a guy like, Noah. He was probably the strongest car all day. It was probably going to be a battle between him and I think Austin Hill if everyone had kept running like they were. Austin had gotten some damage on pit road, but still was such a strong car, showing, that this type of racing is his strength. He was able to hang on, keep the car clean, at least through the end, and get a 14th place finish. And was restarting there in the overtimes up there in the lead, and he had some battery issues, was not able to maintain pace. So a wild finish to a race. I was just sitting in bed watching it, wondering when it was going to end. And that leads to my question: did NASCAR wait until the leader took the white on that third overtime attempt to throw the caution and go ahead and end the race? You had Riley Hurt spin out before the pit road entry, just before it. He started sliding back up the track, and the yellow was thrown as the last car to get around him was going by him. And two cars had already worked their way around him and avoided him. No yellow was thrown, and then all of a sudden, bam, it comes out after the leaders had taken the white flag. I think NASCAR said enough. It had been a long day between the rain delay, all these big crashes, and the cautions. I mean, here in Alabama, we were going into the, we were well past 12 o'clock, going into 12:30 by the time this was happening. So I think if they stuck with what they normally do, which is when they see a guy going back towards the track, they throw the caution. It would have caused probably a fourth overtime finish. It was going to be close, but I think NASCAR took the action they could to make sure that didn't happen. And, that's a shame. It felt like we had sat through all this. The best analogy I can think of is like you pay for a movie, you go and watch it, and the first half of the movie is really setting up well. Like, wow, this is great. I'm so glad we watched this. And by the time the ending starts rolling around, everything's getting set up. You're thinking, where in the world did we go wrong with this movie? I mean, what were the producers and the directors thinking? Everything's just going completely wrong. And then before you hit the ending of the movie, what you've sat there the whole thing through, the manager comes in, turns off the movie and says, "I'm sorry, y'all. I just, this thing went terrible. I think we've had enough. We're just going to call it for you and call it a day." That's the best way I could describe it, is the way that I felt. We had sat there through all this. It was setting up to be a great finish between AJ, Timmy Hill, and Jeremy Clements, and ultimately we weren't able to see that. I was, me personally, sitting there pulling for Timmy Hill, who's just done so much in this sport. I feel like that would have been, a much more big of an upset than Jeremy Clements. But NASCAR throws the caution, and we kind of miss out on what might have been a, pretty interesting ending to the race, and what was a heck of a cluster of a finish to this race. So part of me says, you know what, I can't blame NASCAR, but as a fan sitting at home watching it, it just felt like we, kind of cheated out of it a little bit. I don't know what the fans at the track itself that had paid to be there felt like. I would have wanted to see this thing play out. Let's race to the checkered flag, but ultimately that didn't happen, and NASCAR just mercifully, I guess you could say, ended this race before they could, before it could be even bigger of a mess than what it was. So moving from one cluster of a race to the next, we had the Coke 0400. What was supposed to be Saturday night, but due to rain, it was postponed until Sunday morning. And the main news going into this race was that Kurt Busch on Thursday announced that he was pulling his playoff waiver. That would put Martin Truex Jr. in the final spot for a playoff position, and he was up 187 points on the next person in line. So a new winner was going to be necessary for anything to change in the playoff standings. And Austin Dillon would get the win after surviving a monster crash in turn one and being able to get around and hold off Austin Cindric. So with that, the top 10 behind him, you had his teammate Tyler Reddick in second, Austin Cindric in third. Landon Cassill finished in fourth, followed by Noah Gragson in fifth. Cody Ware finished sixth, and BJ McLeod in seventh. Martin Truex Jr. finished eighth, David Reagan ninth, and Kyle Busch rounded out the top 10. And there was a lot that went on throughout this race. We had some big crashes early that we'll get to here in just a little bit, but the main one was a huge crash going into turn one with 23 laps to go. The drivers drove in 2-3 wide, battling for the lead, and everyone just kind of lost control, spun out. The track was wet. The big question was, when did the rain start? Justin Haley said he was told by his spotter, Brett Griffin, that it was raining when they were coming out of turn two the lap before. Justin Haley was very vocal, angry, upset with how everything turned out, which was understandable. He had a good car, and being a pretty solid super speedway racer, this was a good shot for him to get a win, get an upset berth into the playoffs. So that ended his day along with a lot of others. They did show the in-car camera, or well, the camera from the roof, and played his spotter's audio. And what was interesting was it sounded like his spotter didn't mention anything about rain until they were coming out of turn 4, heading into the tri-oval. Now, whether that was synced up at accurate time, I'm not sure how the timing works with that. But if it was accurate, then Justin was not told of it until coming out of turn 4, when Brett said, "Hey, it's raining up here. Don't lift. Keep going. Keep pushing forward, because who knows what's going to happen. They may get ready to call this thing." I did have a friend who was at the race, Javi Gonzalez. He was at the race sitting at pit road exit, he said, and I asked him, was he there? Did he get to see the wreck going into turn 1? He said he did, that the rain started the lap before. It was really light, almost nothing. And once the wreck happened, then it really started to come a downpour. So looking at all that, the question was, what was going on with the rain here? Did NASCAR think they were okay? Did the rain start? Was it just so light they thought they'd be okay? But maybe with the track being at probably its peak temperature as far as heat, and that little bit of rain they got, did that just completely slick it up and send them up into the wall? Did it hit so fast that NASCAR didn't even have a chance to react? I'm not sure on the timing of everything, how that worked. It was interesting to me that Javi said how light it was, when they were coming around, or how light the rain was the lap before. And Denny Hamlin, he was very vocal on Twitter post race, or well, not post race, but after, the crash happened, he got caught up in it. And he definitely had his own take of it. Of course, he tweeted, thinking about how we avoid circumstances like we had today. Maybe we should be more proactive instead of reactive. If we wait until the track gets wet, isn't it already too late? You can't hold off because of the threat of rain, but when you see it, then we should probably stop. And, that's the thing, is, did NASCAR see it? How were they aware of how wet the track was? I'm not sure. I don't know how proactive you can be with weather. I mean, if you're going to, go off the threat of the weather, then would they even have turned a lap Sunday morning, or would they have held off even longer? I'm not sure. I understand drivers are upset, fans are upset, because it seemed like NASCAR, let them race on a wet track originally. But just with the way it's going back and rewatching everything, getting my friend who was down there's comments, seeing camera angles, it's just, to me, a very questionable situation as how hard the rain was going. I think, obviously NASCAR could have thrown the caution. Better safe than sorry. Driver safety is number one. But again, I was not at the track. I was not up there in the NASCAR officials box, so not sure on that one. I will give props to NASCAR for not calling the race pretty much immediately like they probably would any other race throughout the season. They waited out the rain so they could get it dry and give the drivers who were fighting for those last playoff spots a true chance at getting in. And, because this race was probably one of the third most important race on the NASCAR schedule, not as far as crown jewel events, but you look at the Daytona 500, it is always the biggest race of the year. But as far as wanting to see a race play out, I think this race, the regular season finale, and the final race go before Phoenix for the championship race and the championship race itself, they're going to want to have the best chance they can to run all the laps to give, everyone a full race, everyone a full shot at whatever it be, whether it's a playoff berth, a shot at the championship, whatever it may be. I think the three races are there at the regular season finale, the last race before the championship, and that championship race. NASCAR is going to do what they can to give it a green flag finish, a full distance run. So props to NASCAR for, following through with that, waiting out the rain and through the drying process, and letting these guys get back on track and settle it amongst themselves. Now, going back to the wreck, you did have Kevin Harvick arguing that he was leading, along with a lot of fans were also saying this on social media when the wreck happened. Harvick, he tried to split the middle where you had cars wrecking on the bottom and the outside. But as soon as he got there, the hole closed up, everybody came together, and he got heavy damage from it. And, he said in his interview, NASCAR is making it up as they go. I disagree with Kevin on this. Because to me, I look at this as you're, you had some major damage. Your progress was halted. It's not like, you're driving through and say Harrison Burton was coming up the track and scraped the driver's side of your car, got you out of shape a little bit, but ultimately you were able to keep going on. You had a wall come in front of you and could not make any more progress. Whether the caution's out or not, you are now a part of that wreck in a more major way where you cannot continue through it and hold your position. Whereas Austin Dillon was able to sneak through and do that. And I understand he was hoping, his main case was thinking that the race was going to be called and he should be the rightful winner. But the thing is, he didn't even go back to racing when the track was ready. He didn't make another lap under green at this race. So it's kind of a moot point. I don't understand, why that was such a hot topic among fans and Harvick himself of who was actually leading this race. But I digress. Moving on to Austin Dillon side of it, because you had fans mainly talking about Austin Dillon, and I saw some tweets talking about how he's ruined the 3-car legacy and the Dale Earnhardt legacy that he created in that 3-car. And Austin's just a empty spot in the playoffs. He's not going to do anything. Just yada yada yada. So I saw some stats go across social media. I have some of those included in here, as well as some, that I did some digging on myself as far as Austin Dillon's merit and validity in the NASCAR playoffs this season. As when it comes to top fives, he has more top fives this season than Martin Truex Jr., Alex Bowman, and he has just as many as William Byron. With top tens, he has more top tens than Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, and William Byron. His average finish is better than Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, and is the exact same as his teammate, 2-time winner Tyler Reddick, who many, have been singing the praises of this season, and rightfully so. But I say that Austin isn't somebody to sleep on. He's a consistent driver. He's not flashy. He's just goes out there, he gets the job done, keeps his nose clean as best he can, and finishes races. And the reason I say don't sleep on him is look back to his start of the 2020 playoffs. He had a hot start. He finished second at Darlington. And at Darlington, where they're going for this first race for the playoffs, he has 2 top 5s and 5 top 10s in the last 10 races of that track. The only playoff drivers with a better finish at Darlington than Austin is Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin. So there's more to Austin than meets the eye as far as, stat wise with wins and even overall top 5s and top 10s. He is a solid driver. He's like Chris Buescher in a sense of, he's consistent. He's, not going to go out there and be flashy about it. He gets the job done. So don't sleep on Austin Dillon just because you think he doesn't belong in the playoffs. He does, and the stats show that. And going back to the race and the playoff battle, man, it got intense because, for there towards the end, Austin Dillon lost the lead to Austin Cindric, and Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. were battling as far as for that final spot in the playoffs, as far as who would be the first one out if Austin Dillon was able to get it back around Cindric. Both Blaney and Truex had long days on the track. Ryan Blaney, he got damaged from a lap 32 crash. It was really a wreck that looked like it should have, been the end of his day. He made some hard contact with the outside wall, but hats off to his crew. They were able to keep him going. He did lose 6 laps overall by the end of this race, but he was able to continue going. Truex, he had the same deal. He got involved in an accident. He got, significant damage, but was able to continue. And at the end of the race, you had, so many cars out of it. Not a whole lot of drafting help for Truex, who was in the better seat to, improve his position as compared to Blaney, who was kind of stuck where he was with 6 laps down. It just depended on if anybody fell out in front of him, so he could, spread that gap out a little bit. And at the end of the race, you did have a couple cars drop out like Custer and Jones, and Blaney gained some spots while Truex actually faded. That put Blaney ahead of Truex. Truex ultimately missed the playoffs by 3 points to Ryan Blaney. With Austin Dillon getting that win, Blaney had 3 points up on Truex. So disheartening for Truex. He's had a decent season. always a championship contender whenever he gets in the playoffs. I hate to see him miss this year just because he is a solid driver. I've enjoyed watching Truex's career in the Cup Series, where it looked like he was just done, just going to kind of, mill around in the back of the field and a smaller team. But thanks to Furniture Row Racing, he's able to resurrect his career and really set the NASCAR world on fire with wins and winning a championship. So hate to see him miss out on it. But our playoff field is set, and you now have Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Kevin Harvick, Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch, Chase Briscoe, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric, Alex Bowman, and Austin Dillon all now have a shot at the championship. The first three races are at Darlington this upcoming weekend, the Southern 500. Then they go to Kansas and end round one at Bristol in what is sure to be an action-packed race. Could it be like last year? Could we see some hard feelings and drivers possibly getting some payback or new rivalry started? It is no telling. I feel like that's a smart move by NASCAR to end these rounds at tracks like Bristol and Martinsville, the road, running them at these tracks that can cause some high drama. As far as the playoff standings go, with the first four out after the first round, a couple, drivers that I think are no surprise will be in trouble and will possibly fall out. The first two I will name is Alex Bowman and Chase Briscoe. Just simply, Chase, he started the year out so hot and looked like he was going to be, a true contender week in and week out. Since, as momentum's been up and down with them. Stewart-Haas Racing still not completely back to where they were back in their heyday, but they are getting stronger. Definitely a lot to look forward to in the future. However, this year I just don't see Briscoe moving on past the first round. Alex Bowman, kind of the same deal with him. Once he won at Vegas, it's been a roller coaster season for him. Just some tough races, and now his crew chief has announced that he will not be back after this season. I don't see him getting past the first round. And a couple surprising names as far as number one, where they may be in the standings, and then number two, just being former champions, a former champion that I don't think will make it past the first round. Number one is William Byron. I think he is eliminated just because of the same. He does have, he had a couple early wins since then, just has not shown that much. He hasn't had the best, season as far as continuing on that momentum. Kyle Busch is my other pick, is probably the more surprising of the picks. And the reason I say that is the same thing with him. It's just been kind of inconsistency here lately. He's had some rough runs. And I just feel like the whole contract situation, where's Kyle going to go, is going to be kind of like a black cloud over his head. I just think that's not going to be a good round for him. I could be wrong. Bristol is a great track for him. That could be an excellent chance for him to get some solid points and move on to the next round. But ultimately, my first four out is Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, William Byron, and Kyle Busch. The reason I didn't go with Austin Cindric is because he has really been on a uptick here lately, especially over the past couple months. Austin Dillon, as I said, he is solid at these three tracks, especially Darlington. I wouldn't be surprised to see him carry on this momentum and, just be able to move on to the next round. Same with Daniel Suarez. He is solid enough. Trackhouse has enough speed. I think he will be able to get through the next round. So will any of that be true? We shall see. William Byron had a strong run at Darlington in the spring before the whole incident with Joey Logano that took him out of the chance for the win. That could be a perfect place for him to get a rebound. So we all in all, we shall see, but it's going to be an interesting first round. A lot of big names in this playoff field, and it'll be interesting to see which ones get cut after the first three races. And this week was a little bit tougher to pick out a spotlight driver just with all the mayhem that went in both races. It was tough to pick a driver that just kind of had a solid race day from start to finish. But ultimately, the two drivers I picked are guys who wound up pushing the winners to victory in the Xfinity Series. I'm going with Timmy Hill, who pushed Jeremy Clements past AJ for the win. This is Timmy's second overall top 5 in the Xfinity Series. He finished 3rd at Daytona in 2020. And Timmy's just overall just a good guy, fun guy to pull for. He's, back during COVID, during the, shutdown, and they were doing all the iRaces. He wound up winning one of those at the iRace at Texas. And that was a pretty popular win as far as, even though it didn't count for fans to watch, people were pulling for him. So he got a chance to shine, finishing 2nd. Didn't get up there and do anything just crazy or stupid to ruin possibly his race, as well as Jeremy Clements. He pushed Jeremy onto the victory. And on the Cup Series side, I'm going with Tyler Reddick as my spotlight driver, just for being an overall, true team player. With all the talk that's going on with him leaving RCR, the feelings back there in the shop between Richard Childress and Tyler himself. Tyler pushes his teammate to the lead after, I say pushes him to the lead. He pushed him into the back of Austin Cindric, where Dillon knocked Cindric out the way, but stuck behind his teammate, blocked for him, didn't do anything to jeopardize Austin's win, a chance for Austin to get the win, and gets both RCR cars in the playoffs. So that's a huge thumbs up to Tyler Reddick for that. That I'm sure that will get him some extra points back at the shop with RC. But those are my 2 spotlight drivers, simply for looking at the bigger picture, not doing anything crazy or stupid, like I said, to mess up somebody else's chance at a win or possibly cause even more mayhem in the race. And now we look ahead to Darlington's Labor Day weekend, Southern 500, historic race, true crown jewel of the sport. And the Xfinity Series and Cup Series will be in action. On the Xfinity side, Noah Gragson is the defending winner of this race, so he will definitely be one to watch. He's had, continues his strongest season he's had of his career. But keep an eye on Justin Allgaier, who won this past spring at Darlington in the 7 car. He will be strong as well. I think it's going to be a good weekend for Junior Motorsports on the Xfinity side of things. And the big question is, will Ryan Sieg or Sheldon Creed be able to make up any ground to Landon Cassill for the final spot in the playoffs? Or does somebody somehow sneak up in there and become another upset winner? Time will tell. We'll find out Saturday. On Sunday, we will have the Cup Series, where Denny Hamlin is the defending race winner. Now, with this new car, Joey Logano won the spring race with it, so he will be looking to continue that winning streak at Darlington with this new next-gen car. However, keep an eye on Richard Childress Racing as a whole. Tyler Reddick, he finished 2nd there in the spring after the deal with Joey and William Byron. He was able to take advantage of it, come away with 2nd. Austin Dillon, as I mentioned earlier, he has a couple top 5s and 5 top 10s at this track, so he will be one to watch as well, to possibly sneak in. And if he can just get some good solid stage points, and this is for all the guys under the cut line at the moment, if they can go in there, have a solid day, get some stage points, do anything to get themselves above that cut line, it will drastically change the way this playoffs look. Look at the Truck Series with what Grant Enfinger has done in the 2 races so far for that series. He's went from, looking like he, fringe playoff driver, probably shouldn't be in there, to now looking pretty solid and might be a good threat for the championship if he's able to continue the momentum. So anything can happen from here on out. Expect the unexpected at these playoff races. You're going to start seeing, tension and tempers getting high, and drivers are going to start being more aggressive out on the track, since now it is, all on the line. Everybody knows where they stand. So it's going to be an exciting 10 races to watch for the Cup Series, and you will not want to miss 1 week of action. And that will wrap up this week's episode of 3 Wide. As always, I thank you for joining me and listening along. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to your podcast from. If you have subscribed, feel free to leave a review. Let me know what you think of the show. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week. We will meet back same time next week and go over all the action that happened over the Labor Day weekend at Darlington Raceway.